Tenzin, how are you today?
Very well. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to our
Very
chat.
well. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course, my pleasure.
I think this is going to be a very interesting tete-a-tete with you because we'll be unraveling a few aspects of your life. Maybe you've never discussed them before on any interview before. Made possible, just making sure the conversation is easy, and also looking forward to more and more people joining in. And maybe what is of paramount importance is that people should learn from your own shared experiences, right? Today, that's going to be our main objective because the Tenzin Show really hovers around motivating people who can really resonate with other people who have their own share of experience to share, right? So, very interesting. Now, you've positioned your own cachet, your own prestige and distinctiveness in the industry that you are as an entrepreneur, as the co-founder of Sony Entertainment Television, as an author. You have assumed so many roles now. When you look back, okay, when you rewind in flashes, do you think you anticipated any of this? How do you feel about your journey now?
First of all, Tenzin, thank you for having me on this show. This is my first ever live Instagram webinar, or do you call this a,
Yes.
what do you call it? Instagram webinar or
It's just a live talk. It's a live
live
interview.
talk?
We can
Okay,
call it that
there you
way.
go.
Yes.
So first Instagram live talk, and thank you so much for having me today. So
Yes.
we're starting from crossroad of Sony Entertainment Television, first of all, which itself was a dream project for me because I had left IBM by then and I was an entrepreneur. And so when I got this opportunity through a friend of mine who said, "Hey, would you come and join us, help us, create a television channel?" So that itself was an epiphany for me because I knew nothing about television. So I said yes to that. And then back then, of course, there was no Sony. But again, lo and behold, Sony was reaching out to quite a few people in India, tried to look for a joint venture partner. And by then, we had collected a good group of people, including Shemaru Video, which is Raman Maru, and then also the famous actor Jackie Shroff. And so we were a group of seven. We were called the Magnificent Seven, and they found us. And long story short, we ended up doing a joint venture. So that itself was a huge high for me. But the growth of that, right, the SET growth itself, we had never expected, anticipated that kind of growth, partly because many channels around us and after us went by the wayside. So, for example, there was a home TV which was started by Hindustan Times and BBC and Pearson, and that didn't go anywhere. There was a BI TV, which is Business India TV, didn't go anywhere. Jain TV didn't go anywhere. So there was a lot of television channels which were faltering, and so we were obviously scared every time a new name came out. Because when we started, there was only Zee TV, who was a cable and satellite TV
Yes.
channel, other than Doordarshan. And so, we of course were on tenterhooks, but at the end of it, then from that first general entertainment channel, which started in October of 1995, and it's just interesting because once you push the button and it goes live, it's a 24/7. From that day to today, it's always been live, right? You don't pause it and shut it and change the engine and the engine oil or anything like that. It just continuous 24/7 entertainment. And then from that general entertainment channel, then we set up a Set Max, which is is a movie channel, and then there was this Six, which is a sports channel, and Mix, which is the music channel, and then there was Sub TV that we procured, and so it was a terrific journey, and that included World Cup cricket and IPL and Kaun Banega Karodpati, which is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and we had
Yes.
Indian Idol, of course, as you know. So I mean, that journey was fascinating. We also did a distribution joint venture with Discovery Channel, and then once I exited out of that, that's when I became an angel investor. So your question of did I anticipate any of it? My take is absolutely not. So the only thing I did is I took that risk because a lot of times we are at crossroads when we don't get such opportunities, and even if we get it, we don't take it. Right? We miss it, and later we say, "Oh, dang, I should have taken that." Right?
Yes.
And in my case, I was just so fortunate that my gut told me that this is going to be a massive, large scale growth company potentially. And then, of course, it succeeded probably 10x of what I had in my wildest dreams expected. So from that point of view, it was a phenomenal journey.
Sure.
Can you
I
hear
think
me,
there's
Tenzin?
network glitch. Yeah, I think
Okay.
there's some network glitch from your
Okay.
end, but now it's okay. Now it's audible. Perfect.
Right. Okay. So continue. Yeah. So I basically have described my journey from Sony to the end of Sony. We exited from Sony. So to be really honest, obviously we had not anticipated any of that, and so now here we are. Post that, I tried to retire, and Tenzin, if anybody knows me, then it's fairly difficult. I tried for 9 months to retire. I did some Vipassana meditation. I went on a binge travel. I went to Manav Sadhana, which is an NGO in Gandhi Ashram in Ahmedabad. I did a lot of that, but
Mm-hmm.
9 months after that, I basically hung up and I said, sorry, I don't think I can retire. So,
Okay.
here I am. Then at the end of that, I became an angel investor, but I also helped two of my friends who are founders of Jungle Ventures. So I introduced them. They didn't know each other. So Anurag and Amit, I introduced them, and they went on to form Jungle Ventures. I joined as a managing partner in Fund 1 and 2. So in two funds, I was a managing partner, as a general partner, they call it. But then from Fund 3, I decided that I didn't want to, do any more deals or take board seats and have people reporting to me or go to the office. So in Fund 3 onwards, now I'm a senior advisor.
Okay. Interesting. So you're never going to retire, are you?
Well, I've tried several times, to be honest, Engine, but
Okay.
something keeps coming my way, and I'm a sucker for good businesses, good ideas. But I'm more leaning now towards social enterprise, a lot more than tech and media enterprise.
Right, right. Fantastic. Now, I think, as you mentioned, I absolutely agree on that 100%. Where you were going through this really big dilemma of whether to risk it all or no, because it's very difficult to say no to group thinking. So a lot of people surrounding us will say, hey, you know what, maybe you shouldn't take that risk. That can really dilapidate your entire life. And we often feel that group thinking is safe, it's comfortable, but risking it all sometimes is very important, right? Because when you risk, you're actually kind of sort of stepping your comfort zone out of mediocrity, right? So I think mediocrity is one of the biggest diseases that we have. And when I mean mediocrity is not in terms of financial mediocrity, it's in terms of your thinking, in terms of your mindset. So I think that's a very important lesson that our viewers can learn from your experiences and from
Sure,
many people who've been successful.
yeah. So I tell you, first thing is that most important thing about entrepreneurship, whether it's a tech entrepreneurship or it's a social entrepreneurship, I think it's the ability to take risk. If you don't
Yes.
have the ability to take risk, I think it's okay. Be
Mm-hmm.
at peace, go work for someone, and that's your calling. Not everybody is meant to take risk, right?
Yes.
However, if you do have the risk taking ability, remember that it's not just one time, it comes multiple times. So when you come
Okay.
out of college, right, then at that point in time, you can take a cushy job. Instead, you do a startup. So that could be a risk. Then
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing a job, at that point, you quit your job and you become an entrepreneur. So that's taking a risk. Now, the other risk is
Yes.
what I call taking OPM, right? So taking OPM is other people's money. So you have your own money, which is limited, and then you go and take other people's money, angel investors, venture capital investors, to serious growth money. When that's a lot of burden because you have to return that money, right? They're expecting some returns, and so now suddenly
Yes.
you're taking this next level of risk, saying, I'm just happy with what I have. It's a small little business, and I'm happy with it, or I'm going to take angel investor money or venture capital money, and I'm going to grow it. I hope I can grow it. So there is some butterflies in your stomach when you're taking that money. And then the last risk is, am I going to keep growing this? And if somebody comes and saying, hey, listen, why don't you sell your company to me? And at that point, right, that's when rubber meets the road to say, okay, should I exit this? What if in the future it doesn't work out and I lose everything? Or maybe, hold on, let me be greedy and let me hang on to this, right? So you have always dilemma. Should I hang on to this or should I sell it? And that's a huge risk also because you have other people's money now
Mm-hmm.
and you're supposed to return it.
Yes.
But then you don't want to sell it too early. You don't want to sell it too late. You have to be like time yourself and say, okay, I think this is well balanced. I think they're getting good returns. I'm happy. And so I'm going to walk away now, right? So the risk of failure, right, is what holds a lot of us back. So I guess
Back.
there is a very famous anonymous quote that I will just tell you that entrepreneurship, yeah, is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so you can spend the rest of your life like most people can't.
Okay, that's a wonderful one. Yes, that's true. I think that's very true because am I audible enough?
Yes, of course, I can hear you very clearly.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Yes, so I think what you mentioned is true. The quote is very interesting. I don't know, is it a person who quoted it? It's anonymous, right?
It's it's
But
an
it's a very
anonymous quote. Yeah,
interesting
I mean,
quote.
it is absolutely.
Yes. Now, you've also played a very significant role in bringing IBM to India. How did that all carve out for you? What was the process like?
Yeah, so I joined IBM in Houston, and I had the oil industry. One of my big customers was Chevron, and we were happily living in Houston. Our daughter was 4 years old, and I got this call from a gentleman called uh, Dan, who said that Jayesh, we have a job for you to restart India as a
Okay.
country. And so I said, "Oh, terrific, congratulations, best wishes, but I have no interest in it." And so he says, "No, why aren't you interested? I mean, I think people would be, jumping with joy that, we're restarting in India." I said, "No, no, I'm very happy that you're restarting in India, but I have never worked in India. So if you want me to go to India and live there and restart India, I'm not interested." He said, "Oh, no, 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 I forgot to tell you, but it's in a place called Singapore." So I said, "Okay,
Okay.
give me a day." I didn't want to tell him that I didn't know where Singapore was back then, right? So, I mean, now Singapore has become very popular. Back then it was not. So I came home, we spread a map on the floor and looked for Singapore and then figured out how close it was to Mumbai, where my in-laws were living, and Calcutta, Kolkata, where my parents were living. And so then the next day I said, okay, Singapore, that sounds good. It's an expatriate job. So I came to Singapore for a 2 year assignment. Right? So it was just a simple 2 year assignment to start it. And there were four teams. So I was one of the teams which was doing process industry. So there's four different vertical industries that they were trying to go into India with. One of which was, of course, software development, which is huge. Like people like TCS and all got started with us. But at that time, there was all the steel industry, people like Tisco, and there was oil and natural gas companies, pharmaceutical companies. So whole the process industry is what I did. And I thought, okay, let's go have fun. It's an adventure for 2 years. And then, of course, we did so well that it went on for the third year and the fourth year. And in the fifth year, then finally IBM decided that it was time to go onshore. And so they did a joint venture with Tata, which was originally called Tata IBM, TISL, it's called. And so it moved to Bangalore. They asked me to move to Bangalore. Back then, we just couldn't see ourselves with two kids living in Bangalore. So basically, I said no. But now, right, from zero headcount in IBM in India, the largest headcount any country in the world is India. It's even bigger than US, right? So most people don't know that IBM in India is bigger than IBM in US
Oh,
in terms of headcount, right? So
okay.
that's really and it's doing extremely well, right? So I mean, IBM, we're so proud that original team from Singapore called Offshore Operations. So anyway, at the end of that, they said go to Bangalore. I said no. Then they said go back to Houston or go back to Texas. I found a job in Dallas. But again, we discussed a lot and said, listen, we've come back to Asia. We love Singapore. And so I ended up leaving IBM after 12 and a half years and became an entrepreneur. So in a way, I became a forced entrepreneur in Singapore. And then I did 9 startups, one of which is what we described as the Sony Entertainment Television.
Yes. Very interesting. And also, I find the whole IBM thing really interesting. I love everything about cloud computing because originally I remember I was reading about IBM. It had tabulation, actually a manual tabulation, like punching cards. And initially it was used for social security information in the US. It had a really raw form of manual earlier. And it's very interesting how the revolution has occurred in IBM, within IBM, right? So there's artificial intelligence, there's computing, there's database. So it's very interesting how the technology has really evolved over the course of time. Do you think IBM is still evolving every single day with new launch?
Absolutely. I think it's a very strong company still. It's gone through its ups and downs. Any other company from the previous life would have by now died. Uh,
Yes.
and you'd be proud to know that there is an Indian gentleman who's now the CEO. Arvind is the CEO of IBM now. I mean, in my wildest dream, I could have never thought that there are so many companies, successful companies, where there are Indian CEOs, including my own ex-company, IBM, where the CEO is an Indian gentleman. But again, has IBM grown? like it should have? No, but it survived. So at
Okay.
best, it survived. Now the next wave, we'll see how the next wave goes, because the next wave is everybody feels that it's the FANG, right? The people like Facebook and Amazon and Google and Netflix, and that's really the new future. IBM has always been very innovative, but now become slightly niche as against a holistic computing company that it was before. So it'll be quite interesting to see. One important note is that if you go back 20 years, and you see the top 10 valued company in the world, right? It had things like IBM and General Motors and Exxon and things like that, right? And if you go 10 years back, there was Intel and Microsoft and different types of companies. Fast forward today, the top 10 companies don't have those, right? Don't the top 10 companies change every 5 to 10 years. So today, while we feel that, oh my God, it's insurmountable, companies like Amazon and Google and Facebook, trust me, 10 years from now, when we look back and we'll say, oh, dang, okay, look, those companies are no longer in the top 10 valued companies. There'll be new companies that will come up in the top 10. So technology will evolve, and it's not just limited to artificial intelligence. It's not limited to
Mm.
IoT. There are health tech sector, healthcare sector, right? It's going to boom. Blockchain, right? That's a new sector that's booming. Cybersecurity is going to be a huge thing. But in my mind, I think the other interesting couple of technologies, one is autonomous car, electric vehicles and autonomous cars. And then the other piece, of course, is this new thing, which is instead of this mobile operators, there are new projects that have launched in many companies like Google and Apple, where they're talking about satellite to mobile. So directly from satellite, the
Oh,
mobile connects, right? You don't have to have mobile operators in between. So even if you have them, it's a limited use. There are two factions that will happen. One is satellite to mobile, internet.
okay. So I think we are really unaware of what the future of technology is going to look like,
Absolutely.
because it's rapidly changing, it's rapidly evolving, and robust change can be witnessed within a few months. So you can always see, like, whenever we buy a new phone, let's say iPhone for example, they're always launching a new version of the same phone. So it's very difficult for people to keep up with that, I think, personally. Now,
Absolutely.
as a child growing up, as a young boy, let's go back to you as a young Jayesh, okay? Did you always want to pursue this? Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah. So most interesting thing is that I grew up in a very humble beginning, right? So I grew up in Calcutta. Back then it was called Calcutta. Now it's called Kolkata. I went to St. Lawrence High School. We had no TV at home. We don't have a car. We're from a lower middle class family. And I wanted to pursue engineering. So I got into IIT in Kharagpur, but my rank was a little bit behind, and so I got into metallurgy. So instead, I chose MS University Baroda, which is electrical engineering I wanted to study, and also there were 23,000 students in MS University Baroda. It has all these different faculties. There were 52% women, 48% males ratio versus in IIT. You know how that is. It's a nerdy school. So lo and behold, I'd never lived in Gujarat right until then. I was always living in Calcutta. So I went to school. I went to college in MS University Baroda as an undergrad. And then after I graduated from there, I got admission in IIM Calcutta and also in Austin. But again, my parents couldn't afford to send me to Austin, so I went and joined IIM Calcutta. But after 2 trimesters, my brother Dilesh, he sent me a ticket, and I got admission in a college in Austin. And so I got my visa, and with $100 in my pocket, I flew for the first time ever in my life on a plane. So I went to Austin, and then I got an MSEE from University of Texas at Austin. Of course, I worked to pay my fees and bills and all of that, and I became a research assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, I got a job with the university. So they sponsored me, and I got a green card, from them, which was, I mean, right now it's just totally unforeseen. So that's how it went. And then from university, then I jumped to IBM, which is a switch. But all along, I was aware that my brother Dilesh and we were the first generation who ever
Mm.
worked for someone, right? So my father, my
Okay.
grandfather, great grandfather, they were all businessmen. So there was a business blood, right, that was running through me, and I was always quite, passionate about, enthusiastic about doing a business. But I didn't have the wherewithal. I didn't have the money. So at the end of it, when that fast forward, like I told you about the IBM story, and then when the chance came, when I had to take that leap, where I go to work for IBM in Bangalore or I go to work for IBM in Houston, I will tell you that if I worked for IBM in either of those two locations, I would have continued and probably will have retired from IBM. I would have worked for IBM for maybe 30 years, 35 years. But at the end of it, I just decided to take that plunge. I said, if I don't take that plunge now, I don't know when I'll get that chance. And so at the end of the day, I'm just so incredibly grateful that things worked out the way it worked out. Obviously, I took some risks, but uh, it would have always bugged me if I had stayed with IBM, done extremely well, become a senior executive at IBM. But it
Hmm.
would have always stayed with me that, hey, I never took that chance. And so now both my brother and I don't work for anyone, and we have become independent, entrepreneurs or businessmen, and we feel good about that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Now I am thrilled to talk about your book, What Shall We Do with All This Money? It's kind of matching with my jacket, which is even better. So this book of 312 pages, yes, 312 pages, has some wonderful insights from people on utilization of wealth. And this is not specifically talking about investing your wealth. It's talking about utilization of the wealth. What inspired you to start writing this book, and how was the process of writing this book?
Yeah. So I think most important first uh, disclosure, confession, is that I'm not a writer, I'm not an author, but I
Yes.
had something to say. So here is sort of, I was stuck between that saying, I have something to say, but I'm not an author. So how am I going to do this? Then first thing I realize is that I've got a fairly large network all over the world. I have a large network of people that I know. So the epiphany happened around me, right? Singapore is an affluent place. People are very successful around me. And what
Hmm.
I saw
Hmm.
around me was that gave me that one liner, right? Everything starts with that one liner. And that one liner epiphany was quite harsh in a way, which is you work very hard to make money.
Hmm.
Then you work very hard to make money on your money. And then you die.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So think about it, right? You work very hard to make money. You work very hard to make money on your money, and then you die. And my take is, wait, there's going to be more to life than that. And so I can't help but, you know, be passionate about making money to begin with. Uh, you can't do anything about dying. So it's the in between piece. Is there something I can do about that in between? Why is it
Hmm.
that people are so passionate about, so enthusiastic about making money on money? Is there something I can do to influence people? So that's how I got started. The other thing that happened is that the millennials, right? So I'm uh, so intrigued by the millennials and their thinking and the way they conduct themselves, that my feeling was that there were millennials who are going to inherit hundreds of millions of dollars, right, all over the world, Indian
Hmm.
diaspora kids. And many of them did not know what they were going to do when they get the money. So one was, you're going to just continue to do what your parents are doing. Almost 80% of the millennials that I meet and talk to don't want to do what their parents are doing, right? So there is a
Okay.
strike. It's a big strike, right? So first extinction is great. So what are they going to do? And so that was the other thing that I wanted to see if there was some way for me to have that conversation with many different types of
Hmm.
people, different models. So the book is not really about how to live your life. The book is not an investment guide on your personal monetary wealth. Right? It will not advise you how to become rich or how to manage your money. Basically, it's so whether you're influent or trying to be influent, the book offers you some important insights on money, right? And so it gives you a brief. So I conducted some interviews. So it's essentially a book of compilation of
Hmm.
interviews. That's what it is. Rather than me, so I've written the prologue and I've written the epilogue. So those two things are mine. But so the introduction and the thoughts, afterthoughts, etc. of the books. But the rest of it is, it's a book of interviews of heroes and many unsung heroes who are chairmen, senior executives, entrepreneurs, businessmen, lawyers, private bankers, professors, social impactors. There are impact investors, futurists, gurus, and most importantly, millennials. Again, these are all of Indian diaspora from USA, UK, Africa, Dubai, Singapore, Malaysia, India, all these different places. So you can visit my website called allthismoney.com. So allthismoney.com basically gives you a synopsis of what the book is all about. So that was really the epiphany that said, okay, let's go and chat with all these people and compile a book so that people can do beyond just accumulation of wealth. how best to figure out a model to utilize your wealth. But everyone has different ideas. And so can I just do a very large scan? And so many people who read this book have come back and saying, hey, you know what? I like this model that Dr. Naveen Bhatt is going through. Or I like this, what Amit Chandra is doing, because he's doing it very strategically, process driven. He's got a team. So, he's set up a non-profit organization. And some of them are interested in the journey, not necessarily the outcome measurement and things like that. So there are all that, and there are so many different models in the book. And my thrill is that when people come to me and say, hey, listen, I like this model. Can you help me evolve it? And I connect them to those people. So I'll connect them to, for example, Naveen Bhatt. So Naveen Bhatt is a guy who has decided that he's going to educate kids. So he picks 2 kids at a time each year. And he's been doing this over the last 4 years. So there are 8 kids that he's taking from middle school all the way to college. He's going to not only pay their fees and their upkeep, but also they bring 2 at a time for 1 week to Singapore. So he flies them to Singapore, and the husband and wife, Maushumi and Naveen, they go and spend time in India. So all these 8 kids are in India. So it's not more than just writing a check. So it's basically bringing them and holding their hand and making somebody out of them. So there are other friends of mine. He says, yeah, this is something that I'm more interested than doing very structured non-profit community service.
Right.
So
Now,
that's a
the
little bit
most
of the book.
interesting, yes, and the most interesting thing about this is the first interview is of very own Ratan Tata. I can see it here. How was your experience with that?
It's quite interesting. What a phenomenal person. So I had the pleasure of meeting him twice before. So most of the people who are in that book are part of my network where I either knew them or it's just 1 degree of separation. And so Mr. Tata, I had met him during the Tata IBM time, right? Because there was a Tata IBM joint venture. So that's the first time I had met him. But he's also a special advisor to Jungle Ventures. So my partner Anurag, he has connection to a gentleman called Parekh, who then brought Mr. Tata as a special advisor. So, I've attended a couple of meetings and we've had a panel discussion with him, and outspoken, very clear spoken, more than outspoken. He's a clear spoken. He's not afraid of saying, I don't know, right? I mean, people, when you ask me a question, I'll always try to wing an answer because, we all feel that we know something, even if it's little or lot. But if he doesn't know a lot on the subject and the depth of it, he will hold back. And he says, okay, I'll best tell you what I just think from common sense, but I really don't know that much about the topic. So when I had this interview and I asked him questions about it, obviously most of it is Tata related, but I had a few personal questions also. The important thing is that all these interviews, I start with asking these people how they grew up, right? And so there are interesting stories of all these heroes and unsung heroes, including Mr. Tata. Right? There are a few things about him that you may not know until you read that first page of where he grew up, how he grew up, what were his circumstances. Was he grew up as an affluent person, humble beginning, what happened? And then once you go past that, then he starts giving you, every person in that book, including Mr. Tata, gives you their perspective on wealth. And so he gave me a lot of perspective also on the Tata Trust, right? Which is, absolute magic. The way they've organized and orchestrated that Tata Trust is phenomenal. So very, very inspiring. I get goosebumps just thinking about it.
Yes. So could you please enlighten our audiences of where else they can buy? What are the portals? Is it available on Amazon? What are the other select stores and portals that they can reach out and buy this amazing book?
Sure. So it is available on Amazon. You can go to allthismoney.com, and in allthismoney.com, there is a buy which brings you wherever, depending on which country you're in. So if you have audience here from different parts of the world, so there is an amazon.com, so people who are in US, and there is an ebook also available. And even in India, right? So if you are, Amazon.in has it, and Amazon.in also has the hard copy book, and it also has the ebook. So again, in Singapore, it's on Lazada. So you get a drop-down menu. So when you click on buy, there is a drop-down menu, and people can go and buy it.
Sure. So it's allthismoney.com. Please buy your first copy now. All This Money. What shall we do with all this money, Jayesh Parekh? Okay, fantastic.
Inspiring perspective on health. Yes.
Yes. So I'm very interested to know, what are your principles of success? Because I think each one of us, we have our own definition and meaning of success. What is success according to you in your perspective?
Yeah. So I'll first give you a three-pronged, I have three-pronged tiers in life that I have discovered over time. See, one thing that we all do is that we gather experience, right? So as we are going through life, we collect experiences, our own personal experiences. Then we have something which is a personal belief system, right? So each one of us has a personal belief system where I grew up. So I could have grown up as a Christian, I could have grown up, as a Parsi, I could have grown up as a Hindu, Jain, whatever. From there to today, everything is a personal belief system, right? And the third is a hearsay. So, I hear something from you, I hear something from all these different people that I've met through my life. All those three things we combine together, and that's who we become, right? And our decision making process is influenced by that. So while executive decision making is extremely important, which is I teach my kids also and tell them all the time, the three prongs in life that I've now come to discover is, first one is wealth affluence. Each one of us wants to make some amounts of money, and that wealth affluence is different for different people. So I have now become content. I'm content at my wealth affluence. How much is enough is a big question you have to answer. Because, for example, Mr. Mukesh Ambani still is practicing wealth affluence. So if you keep going all your life, you can keep going, right, till the day you die, because you have this tremendous either ambition, or that's all you know what to do, is you're a workaholic and that's all you want to do. That's all you really like to do, which is fine. I'm okay with that. So if you want to just practice wealth affluence, beyond wealth affluence, once you say that, okay, whatever you have, so the idea behind the book is, what shall we do with all this money is not necessary for millionaires and billionaires. Whatever amount of money you have, that is what shall we do with that money. So it's the utilization of whatever amount you have. So you have to figure out how much is enough. Then the second prong is time affluence, right? So you go into time affluence, right? And so many of us, we sort of, miss that boat. So wealth affluence essentially is financial independence, right? And then the next one is time affluence, which is you can do whatever you want at your will with whomever, wherever. Think about it, right? So you can do whatever you schedule your time. I wanted to do this interview with you when you invited me, and I choose. So it sounds a bit discriminating on my personal time, but that's what I have chosen. I've chosen to make sure that I look after myself and I practice self-love. I used to mentor and advise a lot of people from morning till night. So now when I get a request, I transferred that to somebody else. So I'll give it to my friend Naveen Bhatt, for example, and say, hey, you're the best person to help this person, etc. So if I get 10 of those mentoring requests, 8 of them I might transfer and pass it to other people who can help those people, instead of me taking every guy who comes to me. But there are 1 or 2 which are very special cases, which I personally feel I'm going to enjoy. I am able to add value, right? So there are 2 pieces to that. So again, time affluence is basically doing whatever you want, with whomever you want, wherever you want. Basically, you take the remote control in your own hand. So that's number 2. Then the most difficult part comes, which is the third part, which is mind affluence, right? So the mind affluence, wherein you're finding happiness, calm, mindfulness, compassion, meditation, yoga, spiritual ascent, essentially, whatever that means to you, right? So whether you're an agnostic, an atheist, all the way to very, very ritualistic religious person and anything in between, there is a place for you to ascend. And that ascent is what I call mind affluence. And so that requires you to have time and to find a path, which again, I talk to people about scanning, because a lot of people just take what has been given to them. So if you grew up as a Buddhist, that's all you know. You never scanned. Whereas I would suggest to your kids not to sort of spoon feed them and force fit them. Let them discover, let them go out. I don't tell my kids to practice Hinduism or practice Jainism. If they discover it on their own, great, I'm happy for them. If they discover some other type of spiritualism, like a meditation of some particular path, so it's really discovering your own path, and you have to take that. You have to do something in Hindi we call Purusharth, right? So you have to really, if you're really interested in it and passionate about it, enthusiastic about it, you have to find that path, right? So whatever that path is. So essentially, that's the 3 prongs of life, that I practice. So success to me at the end of the day is finding that content, right? Being content. Now, part of it is also at some point the maturity sets in to figure out that it's not only about happiness, but to find joy. And at some point, you start to find the subtle differences between happiness and joy. One which is instantaneous, sort of instant gratification, and one which is a long-term joy, right? And so you keep looking and discover, and there are a few things that you can do. There is a very famous course which is called The Science of Well-Being, which is taught by Professor Laurie Santos of Yale University, which is free right now on Coursera because of the pandemic. And so if you go and you take that course and you discover so many different little nuggets that she gives you of things that you by habit you're doing. Myths wanting, for example, you don't know that you shouldn't want these things, but you want them. So how do you you intellectually know about it, but how do you actually do some exercises so that it becomes a mechanical habit, so you get stop doing things which are not bringing you happiness and joy? And so I encourage people to take a look at some course like that. It takes a few weeks to basically go through that course, and it's free. So there's a lot of online TED Talks also, and that happiness is, what happiness is. Or there's a lady who Anjani Kumar, who talks about, so when I went to look for God, what I found. Very interesting, thoughts. So I'm constantly intrigued by many of these different models. But at the end of the day, I think to me, success is finding that joy, right? Finding that happiness, but on a sustained basis, right? Not sporadic. It comes again, goes again.
Yes. Because I think oftentimes what most of the people think is if you're successful on a professional front, then that's happiness. For a few people, it's only personal. But I think when you have all of these factors that you just mentioned in alignment, in sync, that's when you can have that strike of balance, right? That's when you can have, because balance is something that we're really seeking for. So I hope the viewers today and people who are going to view this later on, which will be on IGTV, will take back something meaningful and worthy from what you just mentioned. Now, before we leave, I'm very interested to know about your philanthropy. I know that you're a humanitarian at heart, and you love working for people. You love working for social well-being, because I know that you invest in social impact ventures. You're also the member advisory board of Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital in Bihar. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I'll first start by telling you about my allocation of wealth, right? So everything starts with an allocation, and you have a certain amount of my money that I've parked in venture capital funds or tech startups or social enterprise startups, right? So I've got one allocation for that, and one allocation I've done for giving back to the community. That giving back pool, I've split it into three parts. So one part is for nonprofits. So places like Akhand Jyoti, which I'll talk about, or calamity. So there's a tsunami, earthquake, COVID-19. So there is a pool of money for that, allocated for that. The second one is microfinance, so micro lending. So Milap is an organization similar to Kiva. If you're not familiar, you can go to milap.org, MILAAP, milap.org, and it is a micro lending facility platform.
And crowdfunding.
So correct, it's crowdfunding. So it's a very low risk, low return. So you're essentially contributing money, lending money to entrepreneurs, for example, and they return that money back to you, right? And so that money cycles, doing good, right? So it's a low risk, low return, but it's micro lending, so that it rotates again and again. So whenever I get my money back, I put it back again. So it just continues to grow. That's the second allocation. The third allocation is social enterprise. So I invest impact. It's called impact investing, and so impact is equity. So it's basically doing good and being well. So being well means economically you're going to do well, and doing good means you're going to invest in agri-tech, so agriculture, agri-tech, ed-tech, edu-tech, health tech, healthcare companies, waste management companies, environment companies, women entrepreneurship companies, women enterprise, etc. So again, there are two ways to do it. One is as an angel investor. We have a band of impact angel investors, and we invest together. And then there is another thing is an impact investment fund, like Avishkar. It's the biggest fund in India. And so I am an investor in some impact funds, and I also support this thing. So that's essentially my way of giving back. Again, that equity, when it comes back to me, right? Assuming it does. So that's a very high risk, high reward. So high risk, high return, because these are obviously startups, and many startups don't do well, right? But I get comfort that startup is doing well with my money, and while it's doing well, if it didn't work out, it dies. It's fine. So it died while doing good. I'm okay with that. But many of them return me a good sum of money, and I plow it back again. So I circulate that as well. So that's the one thing. So the first one, it's a one way. You give a grant, money goes, doing good. You have to keep pumping money into the non-profit world. Whereas in the micro lending, money cycling, in the social impact world, equity investing, it just again cycles back. So that's basically a three-prong. Coming back to Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital, I think most important thing in any entrepreneurship, whether it's a technology for profit, whether it's a social enterprise or a non-profit, the way I assess these companies is, originally it used to be only three questions: who, what, and how. Originally, when I got started as an angel investor, as a non-profit person also. And so the first one is, who is this person? Who's the leader, right? And so I have four tiers there, which is smart, savvy, shrewd, and cunning. And so I try to gauge people between these, saying, smart means you're intellectually smart, and then savvy is that you can sell something. Shrewd means you're going to negotiate well for your company and yourself. And then cunning is, I'm just going to win no matter what, whether you lose, win, I don't care, right? So I don't do business with people who are cunning, and I don't do business with people who are just smart. I do business between savvy and shrewd. Those are the people who are likely to succeed, because at the end of the day, you have to get economic returns as well. So I look for integrity, I look for credibility, I look for education, experience. All of these are filters, right? So I look at the who. And so that's where I got hooked to Mrityunjay Tiwari. So Mrityunjay Tiwari is the founder of Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital. And he was a soccer player, a football player from Mohan Bagan. And then once he retired due to an injury, then he went to Bihar in Mastichak and he set up this Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital. Today, Akhand Jyoti does 65,000 cataract operations. 80% of them are not for free. And so he invited me to be on the advisory board. And then, of course, the other two pieces out of the three, right? The who, second is what. So what is this big problem that you're trying to solve, right? Is it a useful product or service, right, that is innovative and scalable? And the one that attracted me to Akhand Jyoti was the scale of it, right? So it's 65,000 cataract operations every year, and they've been really successful doing it. And they do a lot of amazing projects like football to eyeball. So football to eyeball is where it's a gender equity. So there are, it's a patriarchal system, agrarian, patriarchal society. And so they invite some teenage girls to come and learn to play soccer. So they get jerseys and they're running around with soccer boots, and right. So they're learning soccer, and then they get invited to join the optometry and optician course. So then they get a full-time job at the end of it. So it's a 3-year diploma or a 4-year degree course. So that program is called Football to Eyeball. And then they also have a vision center, right? So where they it's a glass shop, right? It's an eyeglass shop.
Okay.
So they sell lenses and glasses and all of that. So and the profit that they make out of those glasses, they circle it back into the cataract operations, right? So that was the what, and then the third is how. So a lot of people have good ideas, they're good leaders, but do they have the ability to execute, right? And so that's the who, what, and how. The new thing that I now have started asking questions after Simon Sinek. This is a new question that I ask all entrepreneurs, whether they are social entrepreneurs or tech entrepreneurs, is why? Why do you want to do this business? Why do you want to do this startup, right? So I think that's extremely important. If you've got a good why, almost everything works out. That you'll get a good team, you'll get good customers, you'll get good vendors, good board, good investors. All those things happen. But I think it starts by you having to answer that question, why. And Mrityunjay Tiwari's why was phenomenal. Yes. He basically says, I want to eradicate curable blindness from the state of Bihar. So Bihar is a low-income state, and there are millions of people who are bilateral blind. So both their eyes have cataract. And so they only focus on those people who are blind, curably blind, and they do cataract operation on one eye. So there are millions of people who have one eye cataract problem, but just don't have the time to do that. We are just focusing on the bilateral blindness. So his why was so strong that I basically got really attracted to this. And so I agreed to be on that advisory board. And so a lot of my focus these days is on Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital, especially now going through this COVID, right? So it's a very painful process because migrant laborers have gone back to Bihar and the numbers are increasing. And so they have to shut the hospital down Now they're doing only emergency operations, but they've now figured out a plan how to reopen the operating theaters. There is a whole mechanism of how to clean them after one operation is done, and there is a whole stream of systems. So it will slow down the whole process, make it a little bit more expensive. But they've now figured out how they're going to restart the operating theaters and the hospital essentially. So absolutely delighted to be part of Akhand Jyoti Eye Hospital.
Yes, absolutely. I think in India, I think more than cities, you have villages. And that is the vivid truth. And mostly we are dependent, the economy is usually, I would say, a huge chunk of it is dependent on agriculture. And also considering the fact that people from Bihar, people from rural areas, they really don't have the access to these things. And I think blindness is a very big thing, right? It's a very huge thing. And people cannot access it. Number one, it's expensive, and number two, they don't have the money to get operated, right? So I think it's incredible what you guys do. Really proud of that.
And
Really inspirational.
and it's a double whammy. Unfortunately, in a patriarchal society, when the old
Hmm.
man has got bilateral blindness, the girl child who's going to
Hmm.
school gets
Hmm.
pulled out to look after the old man because he can't look after him. Everybody else is working.
Right.
So can you imagine? He himself is a burden. He is not making any
Hmm.
money, that old man, because he would have been gone to the farm and to the done some tilling and stuff like that. But he's not able to do his work. But not only that, you pull out one girl, and so when we do that operation and he starts seeing, right? Obviously, he
Hmm.
goes back to work, right? He starts making money,
Hmm.
but that girl child goes back to the school, which is an absolute joy for us to
Exactly.
see.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think we need to really understand that patriarchal society can really sort of be a big barrier when we talk about women empowerment or girls' education. I think it's like a win-win situation in both ways. So we're incredibly proud of that, of what you do. We really are.
And I'm proud of Mrityunjay Tiwari. I mean, he's set up a fantastic team. He's got 24 surgeons there. He's built a five-story hospital in the middle of nowhere in Mastichak, where now the
Hmm.
electricity has come. It was only running on generator all these years, but now the electricity has gone there.
Oh,
It's not 24 hours, but it's still not so bad. And there is a lot of help from the government also. So, and we have an
okay.
excellent board. So yeah, we're
Hmm.
making progress, but right now we are a little bit stuck because of the pandemic. But once on the other side of it, we hope to again, get it back again in full swing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the Tenzin Show. You were a delight to speak with. Lots of information, your inspirational story, your journey. It's been so amazing to hear from you.
Well, I really thank you so much. And you asked me questions differently than many other webinars where you took me from the last first, which is took me from
Yes.
Sony days and then brought me back to IBM and then brought me back to childhood and then pulled me forward to Akhand Jyoti today. So I had to really rack my brain and make sure that I was traveling in
Yes.
time with you to keep up with
Yes.
you.
Because I guess I know you like the adrenaline rush. You like things differently.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you very
having me here today.
much. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye
Bye
bye.
now.
See you.